Hey, Cubs fans, and welcome to a brand new edition of Cubs on Tap. I am Ron Luce, joined tonight by the Juice Man himself, Juice. Let's be honest, buddy. I don't think either one of us are going to have fun on this episode.
No, it wasn't a fun baseball game in general. It's one of those that through 162, you probably don't remember much except for maybe almost the last play of the game with, Willie Harris sending Jake Marisnick home. We're going to dive into that. But, offense pretty quiet. Bullpen does what they do, which is keep the Cubs in the game. And the Cubs got just out starting pitch today in a lot of ways. And that happens when you're playing a team that's going to throw, 3 or 4 gem of a guy, starters at you throughout a given series in the Mets. But, nothing to be worried about. I think the Cubs are still good. It's at the end of the day, just didn't have it tonight, just didn't hit. And we'll talk about the send and some of the things that they could have did to win this ball game. But if you're a Cub fan, keep your head up high. This is one of those series I feel like, and I don't know about you if you talked about it yesterday, this felt like one of these series that's like just poised for a letdown. It's after having a great home series, and then you go on to the East Coast and play against the Mets with that starting staff. It was just poised for one of those letdown series. And now they are in danger of being swept with video game DeGrom on the mound tomorrow. And, hopefully they can muster up like a 1-0 win. But we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, we sure will. But just real quick, for those that maybe didn't get to watch this game, not a very high-scoring affair, despite quite a decent amount of action throughout this one. Biggest thing that happened for the Cubs, Javi Baez hits his 15th homer of the season. That was nice to see. He went oppo there. And that actually made it 2-0 Cubs in the top of the third, but then the bottom of the third, Pete Alonso's single with 2 men on ties the game at 2-2, and the Mets would never look back because the same man, Pete Alonso, then in the bottom of the fifth, hit a sac fly with the bases juiced. I mean, all things considered, Brothers gets out of it with only letting that up. But unfortunately, that's all she wrote, because then, like you said, being out starting pitched indeed. Alec Mills started this one. He's 2-1 now in the year. He goes 4 1/3, 5 hits, 3 runs, all earned, 2 walks, 6 strikeouts. So a pretty decent day for Mills overall. But holy shit, when Walker's now 6-2 and he goes 7 innings with 5 hits, 2 runs, and no walks and 12 Ks. Holy shit. Yeah, you ain't doing much, because I know they said it on the broadcast, and when Ian Happ, before that 9th inning, was your last base runner in the 4th inning, you ain't winning a lot of ball games when they can go, I think they said it was 15 straight that were retired by Mets pitchers tonight.
Yeah.
Tough.
Very, it just seems like I don't know if you feel this way. I was watching the ESPN broadcast. I don't know if Marquee even had one.
Marquee did.
But I was blacked out, so you know how it works up here. I'm stuck watching that staff. But it feels like every time they put up a graphic, it was talking about how the Mets are playing better baseball. Their guys are really starting to click. It just seems like one of those times you ran into, wrong team at the time that, they play this series, a month away, and who knows? It's a different story maybe. But I don't know, man. It's I circled 2 things for tonight, and it's the fact that in the first inning, when you did have them on the ropes, you couldn't cash in. And that kind of set the tone for the rest of the ball game. It almost felt like once Walker got through that first inning, it was like the weight was let off of him. And minus Javi running into a pitch and, hitting a home run for the 2 runs that were scored in the ball game for the Cubs, it just seemed like he was in control the whole time until, that wacky 9th inning, which I don't know, man. There's things that you could do to win this ball game, and I think that's the most frustrating part of it, because if he isn't sent, and we can play Monday morning quarterback all we want,
right?
It did take a perfect throw. I understand the opposite side of the argument, but with that said, like, there's 1 out in that inning, and I just think it's a really aggressive play for what? You know what I mean? It's what's the risk of the word is you tie the game if he doesn't make that perfect, but you ran yourself out of an inning by sending him there. And essentially after that, I know Hayward put a great at bat in at the ninth too to work a walk. But after that, it just seemed like with the at bats that Alcantara had tonight, he kind of knew going up there that he really didn't have a shooter's chance to drive that run in. But with that said, it's I think like I said earlier, I think the most frustrating thing is like it's the little things that could have won this baseball game, and they didn't do that as well as they need to because they're not the team that can just roll the lineup out there and be the Cubs. You know what I mean? Like They have to do things right to win ball games because the huge, margin, the small margin for error that the starters kind of, put on this ball club, I think is the problem because once you then pass it over to the bullpen, it's like you're constantly playing catch up tonight. That's not a good recipe for them because with that pen, you would hope you have a lead and then you can go, from the fifth inning on. That's kind of how it sets up. When you're trailing a run there, just such a lot of little stupid mistakes kind of derailed this game. And it feels like the last two nights were almost like that, right? Like last night, they kind of slept, walked, and through the whole game, it felt like. And tonight, it's like, all right, we were in it. And if you do the little things opposed to, just trying to do too much, maybe you end up with a victory in this one. But, just a little frustrating. But like I said earlier, I don't think this is anything to be super confused about or concerned about. Sorry, not confused, concerned about. But yeah, just frustrating. It's a kind of frustrating game that you'll rip up real quick.
Yeah, and I agree though with what you said earlier in the show, Juice, about kind of this series, right? And I touched on it a little bit on yesterday's episode. I think Cody and I even touched on it when he slid in later after I had already started. But like after that monster homestand, you go, you win a series against the Padres, you come home, full ballpark at Wrigley, an electric atmosphere against the Cardinals, and then you go to the New York and it's, I don't think full capacity yet. And of course it's not all Cubs fans. And so just like, again, you go from this high, intensity, adrenaline environment to this. And you travel and again, the Mets, again, we joke about this team having 2015 vibes. Well, I get 2015 vibes right now from this Mets series because the Mets just outpitched the Cubs. That's what happened in 2015 too. And that's kind of what happened tonight. And Cody, there's a fun exchange here in the comments that I do want to share for those that'll ultimately listen in podcast form at some point. But Cody, our loved and trusted co-host here, says all things considered, the Cubs lost because the Mets beat the shift. And yeah, I mean that certainly helps. But then Scott from Iowa chimed in. He said he blames himself because he was sober the last two nights.
Come on, Scott.
Cody turns that in and says he blames Scott now. So sorry, Scott, but apparently you are the scapegoat for this one. Just remember, you always got to hashtag crack them, or in my case tonight, I'm hashtag sipping them. But
yeah, I'm water tonight, so I can't. I'm with Scott in that.
That was me yesterday, so I kind of blame myself for that yesterday too. But like you said, I mean, it's just this series has been so weird. Obviously, this team's still really hurt. The pitching staff, I mean, let's be honest. Peterson had one of his best games of the season yesterday. I mean, his record set it. He was 1-5 coming into that game. But you knew Walker was going to be good. He was 5-2 coming into tonight's game. And granted, I think he even outpitched what a lot of people thought he would do. But he looked really good. And it's hard to beat a good pitcher like that. Like you said, I mean, hell, they were in this game for
the whole time.
The whole time. And like you said, I think why it's slightly frustrating for Cubs fans is because, like you said, there are little things they could have done to win the game. A little thing here, a little thing there. Again, you get more than one fucking base runner between the fourth and the ninth inning, where Ian Happ was their last base runner before the Wilson Contreras singled into the ninth. Who knows? Maybe one of those innings you muster up a run and maybe we're going to extras and it's a whole different ball game. You never know. Again, that's the beauty, like you said, of playing Monday morning quarterback. We can sit here all day and be like, well, if they did this, but at the end of the day, if you're this Cubs team, you got to execute. And it just really felt like tonight that there was, again, parts of the night where they just didn't execute. They executed great in the first inning. I mean, they put a lot of pressure on Walker right out the gate. And then that rest of that game, it felt like they were hoping and praying. I mean, a Wisdom single and then the Javi home run obviously led to some type of offense. But really outside of that, I mean, after that first inning, it really never felt like the Cubs had any like real threatening offense the rest of the night until that ninth inning that we mentioned. And Juice, I know you're chomping at the bit to dive into this one a little more, and I think we can. Just quickly for those again that didn't see the game, Mills 4 1/3. The brothers pitched 2/3. Keegan Thompson went 2 innings tonight, looked pretty good. Worked his way out of a little bit of a jam. Winkler just continues to be really solid, and nobody talks about him. Lugo gets the 2 inning save. Ultimately for the Mets, that's his first season, and as we mentioned, Walker gets the win. But obviously, the talk of the town for this game, at least for the next 24 hours, because again, beauty of baseball, you're right back at it most days the next day. But is the send by Willie Harris, and I think both sides have a fair argument here, and I'm going to play a little bit of a devil's advocate. I'm going to play that like what's the term that I'm looking for? The fair weather fan in Chicago. When they like, oh, I like the Cubs and the Sox. I'm gonna play that on this angle here because, like you said, in that situation you've won out, right? And there's so much that could happen if you have first and third. Who knows? Maybe Jay, instead of taking a walk because he's got 2 outs and he's trying to be real disciplined, maybe he tries to give one of those balls just a ride to the outfield because Marisnik's a good runner from third base and he scores easily on a sac fly. And then you're still tied anyway, and it doesn't fucking matter. Alcantara can come up, strike out, end the inning, no big deal. You go to the bottom of the ninth, you keep the Mets off the board, maybe you go to extra innings. But at the same time, it really did take a perfect throw, and that was a hell of a throw from Guillermo or whatever his name is. I mean, that was an incredible throw because, I mean, I get it. And Marisnik, again, is also probably your best base runner outside of maybe like a Chris Bryant. I would say those two are probably like a 1 and 1A. I think Marisnik is just a little faster in terms of straight line speed, but overall, those are definitely your 2 best base runners. So if you have him on first in that situation, I get it. But like that ball didn't get as deep into the gap, I don't think, as I would have hoped. If it got a little deeper into the gap without Rosario cutting it off in the right center gap, then I'm like, oh yeah, you got to send Marisnik. And if he gets thrown out, hey, they got him on a perfect play, shit happens. But in that case, it's like that ball wasn't all that deep. Like, yes, it was deep. I know people are like, of course it was deep. I know it was deep. But like if that ball is probably 10 to 15 feet deeper into that gap, like if Sogard gets more air on it, yeah, he scores with no issue. And Sogard's for sure at least at second base. And then all of a sudden it's a very different ballgame because now you only have 1 out. You got Sogard in scoring position. Who knows? Maybe the Cubs are able to take the lead and then you're able to, get Kimbrel up in the bullpen and close this thing out and you get a crazy, 9th inning win. But like you said, I mean, again, we can sit here and talk Monday morning quarterback. I still want to hear your thoughts on it, but I can see the argument from both sides. And I think that's what makes it frustrating is because it was such a great, it's like, I call it the teetering the fine line where like you can kind of fall over in either direction and you'll still be okay. That's how this kind of play happened. And I'm not going to fault Willie Harris. Like I think he's done a great job as the third base coach all year. I'm not going to rip him apart, but it's just like, the best way I can sum it up is that's one of those plays where you're just like, fuck, man, we can't catch a break. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I look at that play in like 3 prongs. I look at it as it took a perfect throw, but it also takes an imperfect throw for Marisnik to score, which makes me feel if that's what has to happen, then that's kind of you're playing with your own odds there. You know what I mean? Like, I would never want to put the ball in the hands of somebody else to determine my fate. And at that point, you kind of do. You know what I mean?
Sure.
That's the first prong I look at. The second prong is, why wasn't Marisnik on second base already prior to the hitting the gap? I thought that he should have been stealing the base anyway on McCann. If not, if that's not what you want to do, if I'm not mistaken, it's a 2-2 it's a 2-2 count. Why aren't you hitting and running there with a guy like Sogard? I get he strikes out a lot, but you're trying to pick the base anyway. Right. So it's like I get it. You can run yourself out that way too, but I'd have more faith of Marisnik stealing second than and maybe opening up some holes for Eric Sogard, who does roll it over into that gap a lot.
Right.
I didn't understand why the hit and run wasn't on in there. You have your fastest guy there, and you have a guy who puts the ball on the ground a lot. That was the third prong of that I'm sitting there the whole time thinking, all right, if he's not going to steal, then you got to play hit and run or something, and because you got to make sure you stay out of the double play.
Right, and I was going to say, especially because it feels like maybe more so this year, I think more games, we're seeing it a lot more out of Ross, but Ross likes to use the hit and run. I mean, he's been very big proponent of it this whole season. We've seen it work out a lot of times for the Cubs where, a routine single that should just be kind of station to station base running turns into a first to third situation because he has that guy in motion. And like you said, Marisnik is probably your fastest base runner. Why aren't you having him go in motion there? Because again, like you said, if he's in motion there, he scores standing up.
Easy.
Even with the perfect throw, he's probably still going to score because he can get under the tag.
You know what I mean? I think if he's in motion, I think he scores standing up, regardless of that, because he had to freeze real quick. And I know that, you're chancing the fact that if Sogard hits it on a line at somebody, then you technically run. But how many times has he done that throughout his time here? He hasn't been very well. At worst, he's striking out. And I think that regardless, on a K, I think McCann has no shot to throw out Marisnik at second. I just don't, and I don't have McCann's, caught stealing rate or anything on hand right now. I haven't looked that up, but I just have that much faith in Marisnik's running capability of stealing that bag on a strikeout than I do them hitting a cutoff man and him having to score from first on 2 feet planted in the ground on a liner into the outfield. That's what I think is the correct move. And I think if you were chatting off the record with David Ross, he would be like, well, yeah, maybe I should have, got him moving on or, moving earlier in the count. But I don't know. It's tough in that moment too, to make that call because you don't want to run into an out either. So I get the other side of it, why you didn't send him. But with that said, if I were managing the team, I'm putting him in motion in there. That was just that's the way I would have played that ninth inning, just because I need one run. I got to be aggressive. And my offense hadn't shown that they were going to, string together hits either. Yeah. So I understand the send in a little bit because of what you've seen from the offense, but I think the third prong for me is the most important, and that I think he should have been in motion prior to the pitch. So I see it. I see both sides. I really do. But I lean on the side of I never want to put the game in somebody else's hands to beat me. You know what I mean? I want to do things that I can control myself, and I feel more in control by putting out the stop sign there on having second or first and third with, one out and giving – if Hayward works that walk, then you're looking at bases loaded. I don't know if they would have pitched him that way, obviously, but we'll just for fun here in a vacuum play it as that how it was. And then you're looking at Alcantara, and I have no idea who would have batted after that. But you're giving yourself 2 cracks at it, opposed to having to work a walk from Hayward and only giving yourself 1 crack at it with Alcantara, who, kind of – he had a rough night. Yeah. So that's my 2 cents on the whole send. I tweeted at the moment that I think it's the worst send I've ever seen in a baseball game. I should probably put myself in Twitter jail for that because there's probably worse sends I've seen. I just don't remember them. And in the moment, being a little pissed off, you're like, what the hell are you doing?
Sure.
But Willie Harris has kind of, he's been really aggressive, in my opinion. And that's good for a lot of things, but maybe this kind of reels him back into the, hey, we need to have, legit sends with actual probability worked out in our head before we, move on. And I'm sure David Ross will sit down with him and say, hey, what were you seeing? Why was that something that, but and that's what's so hard because the room for error when you're against starting pitching like that is so minuscule that it's those plays that we're talking about. You know what I mean? And that's fun because that means it's 2 good teams going against each other. Yeah. And that's why, tomorrow, hopefully the Cubs can get out of Dodge with maybe 1 run off of DeGrom, or they just, hold tight until the bullpen try to work a lot of walks, or I don't know. Maybe he's got maybe he's got Stickum on his hands and, he gets tossed early.
Toss him in the first.
I don't know, man. Like if I'm the Cubs, I'm doing whatever I can to score, 1 run, if that. And then you just hold on to your butts because I mean, that guy is unbelievable. I'm going to be watching tomorrow because I'm going to be on this, and it'll be interesting to just see, what kind of movement he has. I don't know about you. Ever since and this is a fun just baseball topic. I know we're probably going a little too long before we preview the next one, but I've been watching attentively about the whole spin rate stuff, and it's interesting to see. And this is just a watch point for all of us here. Start watching, our relievers and our pitchers, because it's going to be really apparent really quick on who was using something, who wasn't. And we'd be idiots to think that the Cubs weren't doing something, because everybody in baseball was doing this.
Yeah.
So it'll be really interesting to see which guys out of that bullpen, which guys, starting pitchers, start to have a rough little go here post, changing in the middle of the season of what the rules are.
Yeah, no, I think that's a very good point. And like you said, Juice, I think going back just quickly what you said between Willie Harris and David Ross, it almost felt like that might have been a situation where maybe Harris saw what you're saying of like, hey, why didn't we have him in motion there? Because then I'm for sure sending his ass. But maybe he's like, you know what? I'm going to test it. I'm going to be aggressive because we need to be aggressive in this situation. I'm going to go ahead and send Marisnik. He's one of our fastest base runners. It just doesn't work out. Yeah, I'm intrigued. I would be very intrigued to be a fly on the wall for that conversation, because I really think that would be a very like educated baseball conversation of them being like, oh, hey, why didn't you think about this? And maybe Ross is like, hell, you know what? You're right. Maybe if we do have him in motion there, obviously, obviously maybe you're praying to God Sogard doesn't strike out. But then again, I feel like Marisnik's fast enough to at least swipe second. Like, McCann hasn't had a ton of success throwing guys out this year. Like, I think they said on the broadcast it was like 32.8% or something like that. Which,
okay, we'll see. That even kind of adds to my argument there.
Yeah, it's like not overly impressive. I mean, it's not like he's gunning everybody.
Well, you cut that in half, because if you're really giving Marisnik plus speed, right, then you're looking closer to like 18%.
Sure, and you're looking at an easy stolen bag then, and at least then. Okay, fuck, it's 2 outs, but you still have a runner in scoring position. So I feel where you're going with that there, and what you said too about the whole spin rate thing. I think that's going to be really interesting, and that's definitely a kind of a long-term topic. I think not only for us here at Cubs on Tap and for Cubs fans, but league-wide to kind of keep an eye on, because like you said, you're going to learn very quickly who was using heavy substance and who was just like maybe dabbling a little bit, and they're like, all right, I just got to figure something out now. To go from there. It'll be intriguing. I'll be intrigued to see how it works out. And
conspiracy theories. I was reading on MLB, one of these MLB like forums that I read on Reddit, and there's a conspiracy theory that they were letting them do this for half of the season, strictly because there are a lot of high profile free agent hitters out there, and owners would. That it would bring down their price because they would have rough seasons. So there was that. Plus, it's going to be really interesting to see. There's already one Tyler Glass now that is talking about how now that it got changed, it affected his arm, and in his last 2 starts, he was trying to figure out something else. Now you're talking about, with the injury epidemic that's going on post 2020, does this add to it? Yeah. Does this give this, do you have a run on arms now because, they can't grip the ball as easy and they're trying to generate more spin. So then they overthrow, and that's an issue. And if that's certainly something that is going to perk up, the players union, and it'll be talked about, about 2022, a potential strike coming. There's a lot of interesting connected baseball points right now that I think as Cub fans and as baseball fans in general, we could sit and talk about for hours and really have a million hypothetical situations where, you don't know what's going to happen to baseball for the next couple weeks here. It'd be really interesting to see, look at the Cardinals. The Cardinals have had one of the worst pitching staffs since they announced that they were going to start cutting down, since that whole White Sox Mike Schwitt or whatever his manager's name is over there in St. Louis. Who gives a shit? But
it doesn't matter.
Yeah. And since then, they've been god awful. So were they cheating? It's really interesting right now. And I'm just, for our viewers and for our listeners, pay attention, because this is a really interesting time in baseball.
I was gonna say, you kind of got everybody's wheels turning now, and I think that's a really interesting point. I'm actually very much looking forward to kind of seeing how that affects baseball, because it's going to be interesting. I'm going to leave it at that. I don't think I really don't have much else to add, because I don't have a hypothesis. I'm very intrigued. Like, this is truly the situation where, like, you're the one single guy in your group of friends, and you go out to the bar and that one girl intrigues you, and like, you really don't want to go say anything because you don't got a wingman, but you're kind of watching from a distance. That's kind of how I feel about this right now. I'm like, I don't really have an opinion on the whole thing. I don't know how it's going to affect everybody, but I'm going to sit back and I'm going to, keep my eyes open and see what happens. So I'm right there with you, man. But I'll tell you what, buddy, are you ready to go ahead and look forward to tomorrow's game?
Yeah. What? Yeah.
Yeah. Everybody will understand.
If we're like this, I can't imagine why what they're thinking inside of their dugout. But I know they're probably thinking, let's just go out there and we'll put good at bats together, see where it lands us.
Let's just hope everybody has fun, Juice. That's exactly what they're thinking. But as we mentioned, the Cubs are back at it again with the Mets tomorrow for Game 3 of 4 in this series. And unfortunately, the next two games are against a Marcus Stroman on Thursday and one Jacob deGrom. But before we get to that, this game will be a 6:10 Central Daylight Time start once again on Wednesday at Citi Field. Usual suspects in both markets once again: 670 The Score, Marquee Sports Network in Chicago, WCBS 880, WQBU 92.7, and Sports New York in the New York Mets market. As there was an article that came out today from here at Cubs on Tap and on Tap Sportsnet, Robert Stock will make his Major League Cubs debut, not total Major League debut, but just his Cubs debut. He is being recalled to start tomorrow's game. He is unfortunately 0-3 with a 4.12 ERA in 9 games at AAA Iowa this season, but he does have, I'm going to pull this number off the top of my head. He has 25 punch-outs in 19 2/3 innings with only 4 walks.
Nice.
And the only reason I remember that is because I wrote that article up earlier. But
there you go.
Good. And he paints 100 with his fastball. I mean, he's got some stuff. He does have major league experience. He is 31 years old, so he's certainly not quote unquote a spring chicken by any means. I mean, he's not old, but it's not like he's some high profile 23-year-old coming up like some of these kids are for the Cubs. He has 52 games in total with both the Padres and the Red Sox from 2018 to 2020. And as we mentioned, Jacob deGrom is on the mound for the Mets tomorrow. And why we keep giggling, ladies and gentlemen, well, let's talk about his video game numbers really quick. deGrom is 6-2, which, okay, that's a respectable number. His ERA is a .56. It's under 1 as a starting pitcher. Oh, and he has 103 Ks. And for those that maybe don't understand how much that is, Taijuan Walker, who just struck out 12 Cubs tonight, had 60 Ks coming into tonight's game. He's 103 fucking strikeouts, Juice. Holy shit. Here's the one thing, and I will say this real quick, and then I'm turning it right over to you for a preview and a Fly the W player. Per MLB.com's preview, and I quote, deGrom exited his start on Friday against the Padres after only 80 pitches due to right flexor tendonitis. But the Mets expect him to be ready in time for his next one against the Cubs. They will likely monitor his workload due to the injury scare. So, can the Cubs chase deGrom early by working deep, counts and at-bats, making him throw a lot of pitches, and maybe get him out of there by after the 4th inning, and then, maybe you can beat up the bullpen. So, Juice, that's where I turn it over to you with that information, sir. What do you got for me for tomorrow?
Yeah, knowing how good he's been, he could throw a complete game on like 70 pitches or something like that. He's nasty. Preview for the game, put the ball in play if you can. That'll be the name of the game. Try to at least make the defense make throws. I think that's the hardest. The guy's just unbelievable. Good. Yeah, I mean, put the ball in play. That's all I can say. You know what I mean? It's go up there with expert. And my bad to the viewers. I did not realize this was a 4-game set. So still could split. It'd be the most difficult route to take a split between Stroman and deGrom. But Yeah, your best bet as a Cub fan is he's walking people early, driving up that pitch count. Maybe the Cubs are able to flare one out in center field or into the outfield and score two or something on a one of those check swing kind of plays, or I don't know, get runs however you can get them. It's clear you're not going to be hitting them around the yard. Probably not. I mean, that'd be who knows. Watch now they'll score like 10 runs on them in the first inning or something, which would
Yeah,
be
just
like
to
a
spite you.
miracle.
Yeah.
But with that said, just put the ball in play. Make sure the guys are. Make sure you're not beating yourself either, because it seems like this is one of those games that like tonight, come down to one or two plays if you're able to keep yourself in it. But yeah, keep it close, and if it gets to be a bullpen game, I think the advantage sways to the Cubs, but you got to get there first, and hopefully Stock.
Stonks. No, I'm just kidding.
Stocks. Hopefully, yeah, that guy. Hopefully he can bridge the gap to the bullpen, go toe to toe. It'd be kind of cool to watch the pitcher's duel tomorrow. I'd be okay with it until it got to the bullpen, and I'd take a nice 5-0 Cubs win because they knocked somebody from the Mets bullpen around. That'd be cool. But with that said, for the Fly to W player of the game, I'm going to take Anthony Rizzo. I think his approach just fits tough pitchers. He may even go into tomorrow's game choking up early just to put something in play. Hopefully it's after, a walk or an error or something like that, and the Cubs can get some early runs. Early runs will be big because, as they say, good starting pitching, you got to get to them early. So if they're going to win tomorrow's game, you'll probably know within the first 3 innings if they're going to have a chance, because with a new pitcher on the mound for the Cubs, who we don't know what you're going to get out of him, and a video game guy like that, this has the recipe of getting away from you pretty quick if you're not ready to play early. So,
For sure.
With that said, going to go with Rizzo, and fingers crossed that they can get the best of DeGrom and be the first to do that, because I don't think anybody's really done that, to be honest with you, yet.
Yeah, I agree. And I actually a really good pick by you. I just wanted to share with you Anthony Rizzo in 14 career at bats is batting .500 with 2 RBIs against DeGrom. So actually has the best overall average based on amount of at bats. The only guy that technically has a better average is backup catcher Jose Lobaton. He's 3 for 5 in his career with an RBI against DeGrom. But in terms of actual number of at bats, Anthony Rizzo by far and beyond is the best Cub against DeGrom. So I like your pick there. And Juice, just like you were saying about the tough road to a split. Obviously DeGrom and his cartoon-esque, numbers. Let's not forget Marcus Stroman's having a damn good year too. In 13 games, he's 6-4 with a 2.33 ERA and 67 strikeouts and 77 to third innings pitched. So he's not fucking around this year either. So the Cubs definitely have the hard route right now to a split. You got to go through probably the Mets' 2 best pitchers that are healthy at least right now. Obviously, Syndergaard being healthy, he's probably number 2. Still, Stroman as your third pitcher is absolutely insanity because, he was an ace in Toronto for how many years. But nonetheless, I agree with you, man. You just got to hope and pray that you can get to DeGrom somehow. You hope he has a bad game, maybe because of, exiting early with that tendonitis. Maybe it bothers him tomorrow. Who knows? Who the hell knows? Whatever it takes. If you can get something out of him, that would be absolutely fantastic. And that's definitely the biggest key heading into tomorrow's game for sure. So I have not much else to add because I agree with you on a lot of those aspects. And just for shits and giggles, I'm going to go a little off the board with my Fly the W pick tomorrow. I like your Rizzo one, and I don't want to take yours. I'm going to go ahead and take Patrick Wisdom because I don't think Chris Bryant's going to be in the lineup. He obviously left tonight's game. I know we didn't really touch much on this, but left tonight's game with a right hand contusion. They said he couldn't hold a bat, and that was why he got pulled out of the game. But x-rays were negative. So nothing's broken. It's just a really badly bruised hand. So he's probably going to be out at least, probably 2 to 3 days. Probably nothing too terribly crazy. I would expect to see him back at Wrigley this weekend against the Marlins, probably in the lineup at some point. But I would expect Wisdom to get the start tomorrow. And, a guy that DeGrom has never seen, and maybe he makes a mistake and throws Wisdom a high fastball, which he loves to see. And maybe Wisdom nukes it in the left field. And who knows? Maybe that's your one run that gets you in that 1-0 scenario to the bullpens, and then all of a sudden the Cubs can erupt. So I'm gonna go ahead and take Patrick Wisdom, or as some people have been calling him on Twitter, Patrick Wisdong. I don't know if you saw. I don't know if you saw that picture, Juice.
I did not yet.
Oh boy. We'll leave it at that. We'll talk about it off air. Patrick Wisdom. He's my Fly the W pick for tomorrow. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we want to go ahead and wrap it up. But before we do, we want to remind you Cubs on Tap is the official Cubs podcast of the On Tap Sports Network. You can go ahead and check out all of our great work at www.ontapsportsnet.com and at OnTapSportsNet on social media. You can follow the pod-specific accounts at Cubbies, that's Cubbies on Tap. We are on both Twitter and Instagram there. You can follow myself. I am at Luce on Tap on Twitter. Juice is at Juice on Tap on Twitter. We also have other great guys here at On Tap, at Cody on Tap, at Joe Maris, at The Riot 326, at Marty Laval, and so many more. You go ahead and follow all of our great Cubs writers. And not only do we have great Cubs, we got Bears, Bulls, Blackhawks, and yes, Cubs fans, again, I say it every time. We all got Sox friends. Go ahead and bring them over to us as well, because I think our Sox on Tap group is pretty damn good. So once again, www.ontapsportsnet.com and at OnTapSportsNet on social media, the On Tap Sports Network. Go ahead and check out what's on tap in Chicago sports. Well, Juice, despite a not-so-fun outcome, Cubs losing 3-2, it was always a blast talking to you, buddy. The Juice and Luce show on the mic tonight. What do you say? We get out of here the only way we know how to, my guy?
Let's go Cubs.